Hey, this is Mark. Good evening. I did a lot of research over the weekend, and it was such an exciting weekend in terms of news. I can tell you this, I think the stock market is going to go down because the Democrats have new strength by rallying up the people over this anti-abortion law. Actually, it's not an anti-abortion law. The Supreme Court simply gave the rights to the states to make the decision. But it does seem as if the stock market might suffer because they were expecting there to be a Republican runaway in the midterm elections. But I don't believe that's going to happen. Not with all these people so upset over the misinformation that they've been given regarding the removal of a constitutional right for abortion. The fact of the matter is, abortions might very well still exist in the states, depending on how the states handle it themselves. Okay, so let me give you the news. Thousands of anti-NATO demonstrators rallied in Madrid on Sunday before a summit of the Western Military Alliance in the Spanish capital this week. They don't want NATO to make any war, and they don't want them to work with the U.S. against Putin. They just want to leave Putin alone. Clearly, they're out of their minds. Demonstrators called for U.S.-led NATO to be dissolved, for military bases maintained in the United States and Spain to be closed. Banners with words, "No NATO, no to war, for peace," were held as they marched through the city. Vladimir Putin will visit two small Soviet states in Central Asia this week, in which they will be Russian leaders' first known trip abroad since ordering the invasion of Ukraine. Basically, Putin has been hiding out. He's feeling stronger. Pavel Zarubin, the Kremlin correspondent of the Rossiya 1 state television station, said Putin would visit Tajikistan and Turkmenistan and then meet Indonesian President Joko Widodo for talks in Moscow. Other news. Human rights groups in Morocco and Spain have called for an investigation in the deaths of 23 people during an attempted mass crossing in the Spanish enclave of Melilla in northern Africa. Authorities said individuals died on Friday as a result of a stampede after 2,000 people tried to climb the iron fence that separates Morocco and Melilla, with some falling in attempt. Now to the gas crisis. A Katyusha rocket struck near an Emirati-owned gas complex in Iraqi semi-autonomous Kurdish region without causing damage or casualties. Local officials said the third such attack in 72 hours. The rocket fired on Saturday targeted the Khor Mor gas complex owned by the UAE energy company Dana Gas, said Sadiq Mohammed, an official from the adjacent Khodram district. Sounds like Russia is doing what they can to make gas prices go higher. In Israel, Gaza Strip, the West Bank, a 16-year-old Palestinian teenager has died after being shot by Israeli soldiers in the occupied West Bank, according to Palestinian officials. In American news, a U.S. Court of Appeals upheld an Arkansas law that restricts state contractors from boycotting Israel, raising concerns about governmental infringement on free speech when it comes to criticism of Israeli abuses. The Eighth Circuit Court ruled on Wednesday that boycotts fall under the commercial activity, which the state has a right to regulate, not to expressive conduct, protected by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. Well, sounds to me like we will protect Israel. New York Times makes accusations that an investigation has concluded that an Israeli soldier, most likely, which is not, it's just most likely is not fact, fatally shot an Al Jazeera journalist, Shireen Abu Akleh, adding to the growing body of independent probes that have found that the Palestinian-American correspondent was killed by Israeli forces. The New York Times report published on Monday said no Palestinian armed men were near Abu Akleh at the time she was killed in the occupied West Bank, dismissing early Israeli theories blaming Palestinians for the incident. Now on to speaking about the Turkish president. President Erdogan says Turkey would like to have better ties with Israel and that talks at intelligence level continue between the two sides, but has also criticized Israel policy towards Palestinians as unacceptable. I would not trust the Turkish people. Russia is going to have another problem with their bond payment. At least there'll be a test this week, with just days remaining before it potentially slides into its first foreign default in a century. 3 interest transfers totaling almost $400 million are due on Thursday and Friday, but more pressing is a Sunday night deadline on previous missed payments from late May. On to Tesla. Tesla Inc.'s new car factories in Texas and Berlin are losing billions of dollars as they struggle to increase production because of a shortage of batteries and China port issues, Chief Executive Elon Musk has said in an interview. Both Berlin and Austin factories are gigantic money furnaces right now. Okay? It's really like a giant roaring sound, which is the sound of money on fire. Musk said in an interview with Tesla owners of Silicon Valley, an official Tesla recognized club in Austin, Texas, on May 31st. That's some serious turkey. Copper prices have been falling, but conveniently, workers at the Chile state mining company, Codelco, the largest producer of copper in the world, have launched an open-ended strike in protest of the government's closing of a foundry to curtail pollution. At least 18 people were arrested after the strike began on Wednesday. Workers gathered at 6 mining facilities around the country, blocking the entrances and setting tires on fire. Among the facilities targeted were Ventana's foundry, which the government announced last week that it would shut down after a series of sulfur dioxide poisonings were reported. This might also boost the price of copper. Boosting the price of copper will also make that country wealthier. Russia may cut off gas to Europe entirely as it seeks to bolster its political leverage during Ukraine's crisis, the head of the International Energy Agency said, adding Europe needed to prepare now. Although it's hot where you are, most likely you're in summer, you must prepare for the winter now because there may be major gas shortages, which means that the price of oil will be rising substantially, as I have called for the past 2 months. Pride parades march on with new urgency across the U.S. Democrats have insinuated that gay marriage is now going to be overturned, yet that has not been presented to the Supreme Court. In other news from Chicago, Fox reporter had his brother shot and killed in Chicago. Unfortunately, I believe it was a stray bullet that hit the brother. The Fox reporter did not shoot the brother. It's just that the Fox reporter had a brother that was shot and killed in Chicago. That is very sad. In Evanston, Illinois, the great state of Illinois, it seems as if there is a doctor that is now doing some surgery on some high-risk women that might get breast cancer. She's actually performing mastectomies on women as a precaution to a potential breast cancer. It's a big decision to have surgery while not currently ill, Dr. Kopkash says. When people come to see me, they've been thinking about it for a long time. Breast cancer surgery, in many cases, moved away from complete breast removal or of decades past. So people are having mastectomies before they even get cancer. It's very scary. In other news, scientists are saying the southwest of the United States, together with adjacent parts of Mexico across the Rio Grande, is one of the driest parts of North American continent. But over the past 2 decades, even that expected dryness has been taken to the limit. According to Park Williams, who works at Columbia University's Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, the current lack of rainfall in the area constitutes a mega drought of magnitude seen on only 4 occasions in the past 1,200 years. I don't know where they get all the data going back 1,200 years. Other news. Hundreds of Ukrainian refugees, this is news from Mexico, hundreds of Ukrainian refugees arriving daily have a message for family and friends in Europe. The fastest route to settle in the United States is booking a flight to Mexico. U.S. authorities on Monday announced the discovery of a period. That story ends. Another news from Mexico. U.S. authorities on Monday announced the discovery of a major drug smuggling tunnel in Mexico's border running the length of a football field on U.S. soil. The secret passage from Tijuana to San Diego featured rail and ventilation systems, electricity, and reinforced walls, authorities said. It was discovered near San Diego's Otay Mesa border, crossing in an area where more than a dozen other sophisticated tunnels have been found in the last 2 decades. U.S. authorities said it was unknown how long the tunnel had been operating and what amount of drugs, if any, got through undetected. The seized 1,762 pounds of cocaine, 165 pounds of meth, and 3.5 pounds of heroin in connection with the investigation was taken in by police. 6 people ages 31 to 55 were charged with conspiring to distribute cocaine. All are Southern California residents. Oh well. On to Colombia, South America. I've been saying that the communism is spreading through South America rapidly. Colombia sits in between Venezuela and Peru. Out of Colombia's, and this is news, out of Colombia, 39 million eligible voters, Petro won 28.9 of that total, meaning 71% of Colombia's voters didn't vote for Petro or fantastical social spending promises. Those spending promises provoked rival presidential candidate Sergio Fajardo, a mathematics professor, to show with detailed charts that Petro's programs are in fact mathematically impossible, costing more than 130 trillion or 33 billion US above the nation's already debt-ridden economy, with no rational revenue offsets proposed. Having stagnated at 8.5 million votes last month in the first round of presidential voting, the same number he got in his losing 2018 presidential candidacy, President Petro subsequently pivoted his message more towards the center for the second round, mainly by recruiting well-known former Colombian economics expert Rudolf Holmes and health ministry expert Alejandro Gaviria to promised cabinet positions. Ironically, Gaviria only weeks prior had publicly described Petro's proposed economic programs as suicide for Colombia. Petro is the new left-wing president of Colombia. Those chameleon moves, plus the Colombians' mainstream media, described as one of the most corrupt and dishonest but effective campaigns in the nation's history, successfully convinced another 2.7 million voters to roll the dice on Petro. The devil you know versus Hernandez, the devil you don't know. Notably, the more rational, business-oriented Medellin and Antioquia areas once again voted overwhelmingly against Petro in the latest round, having earlier voted overwhelmingly for former Medellin Mayor Federico Gutierrez in the first round. That's big news out of Colombia. Let's go on to other news. In final, for today's news, I have to say this. In final, regarding the Supreme Court ruling on abortion, this is what my daughter said to me today. Women in middle America of lower socioeconomic class and with lower education will not have the resource of abortion, and this will lead to other problems. I had the urge to go to church. I'm not a regular churchgoer, but I did have the urge to go to church. And I went to church in Florida, and this is what the priest said at the Mass. He tied several religious messages, including a birthday of solemnity of the birth of John the Baptist. When I went to church, I was pretty much looking like a homeless person, and of course sat alone quietly. I promised myself that I would return home and write down all my observations, and here they are. I saw a church filled with young parents and young children. I saw some older people that were clearly near the end of their life, and they were true believers. I saw many middle-aged people, and I just wondered how many were truly good people. I wondered how many were mean to their spouses or just angry in life. But then I stopped, and I remember being a kid and feeling like I did not fit into this scene. These are good people, and I'm never going to be as good as them, is what I used to think. In my life, I have always been a believer, especially when I needed something or was very scared. I suppose that since I have been through so many crises in my life, I might fit into the saved category, or maybe I'm just good enough. My point is that I don't see much difference between the abortion supporters and the Catholic, Christian, pro-life people. I think they are kind of all the same. Each is trying to have the best life they can. One wish to be judged by God, and the other pro-abortion people, they may just want to back abortion because, well, they want to make sure that they have that choice if the time comes. What I see most, I just see fear in both, the pro-life and the pro-abortion people. I see them all in fear of life and death. That's all I have for you tonight. Good night. Remember, it's never as it seems. Please follow the news. It's very, very important. If you don't know what's going on in the world, you can't solve any problem.